don't check your cameras. I'm actually in studio for this week on Startup Security Weekly number 62. We're going to have Roi Abutbul talking to us about Javelin Networks. We're talking a little bit about why the side hustle might make a big impact in your career, especially in security. Why maybe we don't actually need more empathy and something called the false consensus effect. In the news of interest, what happens when you sell your startup? Zscaler files for an IPO confidentially. CrowdStrike, MetricStream, Skybox, and Proofpoint all in the news on this episode of Startup Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show about security startups, how to secure your startup, and advice for security startups. It's Startup Security Weekly.
I need it from the top.
Brought to you by, make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Go to itpro.tv/startup security and use the code SS30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Are you looking for a career where you can make a real difference? Accenture Security is looking for passionate, creative minds to tackle some of the biggest security threats facing us today. Innovative thinkers who want to outmaneuver cybercriminals. They're hiring specialists across the spectrum, from security strategy to cyber defense, digital identity, and application security, helping to deliver holistic solutions. If you want to use next-generation technologies and global resources to change the future of security, visit Accenture.com/security careers.
November 10th, 2017, and I am in studio finally. Woo-hoo! So it's weird. Like, I feel like we should go to the not sand hobo and not joining us by Skype. It's I'm totally thrown off because typically if I'm doing this, I'm at home looking at my cell phone screen, which is
weird.
Absolutely.
But now you're here in studio.
I'm trying to get used to it.
It's your third show now in studio, which is awesome.
It's been a great week. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
We should do this more often.
I was actually thinking I need to come up here more often. It feels comfortable. I hope you guys think that Paul and I have a good chemistry when we work on these types of things. I think we feel that way.
Yeah.
But being in person and getting to talk about some of this
different
stuff,
dynamic, right?
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And you guys, if you ever get an invite, if you're able to be a guest and they say, hey, come out to the studio, do it. It's a great team. I love the studio. If you guys have seen, it's a new set. This is we're debuting it out for people.
This is actually the Secure Digital Life set. And what's interesting is I'm waiting for the feedback on the CISSP book, the CISP book. And Michael, if you could just grab that.
I think we should show people.
We just show people that this is our CISP book, and this was a gift from a listener. Now, it had stuff in it because when you open the pages, there's actually a cutout with a kind of a funny, if I hold it the right way, a funny picture in there, and there was bourbon and some collapsible glasses when it was gifted to me. So
pretty sure that's how you get through the test?
Yeah, I hold this near and dear to my heart because it was a gift from a listener, and hilarious, all in the same token. So we're adorning it on set. So, oh look, now you can actually see it.
Yeah, that's nice. That's fantastic. No, but it's a nice set. It's nice to be in person. It's nice to talk about these things. I think we've had a good week. We've been taking a look at two things that you're going to see across the whole network in the coming year. And so this was fun. So if you get a chance, come check it out, and you'll get to be part of a lot of that stuff.
Oh, we're doing a webcast next week. Onapsis has a webcast on November 16th, 3 to 4 p.m. SecurityWeekly.com/Onapsis. That's ONAPSIS. Onapsis, not Y and I. Seba, who's their lead of research for Onapsis will be on talking about, they disclosed something like 20 some odd vulnerabilities in October alone across SAP and Oracle. So we're going to have an interesting conversation, dive into some of the technical details, because Seba is the lead researcher, it leads the team, and talk about some of the other things, like what conversations should you be having about, because that's just 1 month across 2 products, and that's just one vendor. There were hundreds of vulnerabilities disclosed across those 2 different products. One vendor was responsible for 20 some odd vulnerabilities. So to me, this is a big problem that we need to talk about and teach people how to have those communications, and teach people how some of these vulnerabilities work. I mean, there's cross-site scripting and SQL injection in there, which largely, I think, in my assessment, are on the decline in certain areas.
They might be on the decline. I mean, there's still challenges that
they're still there.
But, and what I like about things like this too is that when you see us talk about these webcasts and you think, well, I'm not sure if I have to deal with that or not, or what I like about it is if somebody can tell you some of the things that are happening, and we're telling you these are business critical applications or these are business critical functions, and you're using one of those or you're doing something similar to it, when you get a chance to listen in on that, or when you get a chance, for example, listen to the interview we're about to do today, and some of the knowledge you're going to gain from that, what we're also showing you are ways that you can bring this to the business. And that's the difference between being the security person telling everybody no all the time, and the security person who says, hey, I've learned about this, and this is pretty important to the way that we do business. How can I help? Right? And that's, I think, the big difference is that if you have that knowledge and that comfort with what's going on, it turns into I know this is important to you. I've learned about it. How can I help? As opposed to, let me tell you how it's going to be. Because trust me, that's not going to work if it's really business critical.
Well, what's funny is, you may be thinking, well, I don't have SAP or Oracle, but you most likely, I bet you have Active Directory.
Yeah.
and if you do, you got some problems.
Then you're going to stick around for this one.
Yeah, you're going to want to stick around for this one, right?
Yeah, no, we're excited today. So Roi Abutbul is joining us from Javelin Networks. Both of us have talked to Roi a number of times, and if you followed some of the different programs, you've seen some of the really cool technical segments. And there's some things that Roy's taught me that I'm actually really excited to talk about, but I don't want to give them away. But so what we're going to do is we're going to get a chance to talk a little about Active Directory, and I feel like we're talking about Active Directory a lot. And so if you want to learn how to think about it differently and how to maybe protect it a little bit better, that's exactly what we got Roi. So Roi, welcome to Startup Security Weekly.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here again.
Yes, nice to have you. And Roi is the co-founder and CEO, so I like having co-founders and CEOs obviously on this show because it's a different conversation than some of the other shows that we have.
Yeah, in fact, how did you get your start with Javelin Networks? How do you? I mean, I've read your bio, so you've got a pretty interesting background. So how do you take your background, actively protecting and looking at things, and turn that into a company? What was that process like for you?
So yeah, actually, we started back in 2014. Me and my co-founders, actually, two out of three, we served in the same unit. And one of them, and the third one came from the intelligence units. We had a joint operation between my unit, which is at the Air Force, and his unit, which is again the intelligence forces. And we used to hang out a lot and do our job. But eventually, we saw that there is a gap. There is a gap in the industry that is there for something like 17 years, since I was something like 16 years old. And we decided to do something about it. We decided that there is an opportunity, not just creating a solution that solves a real problem, but also raise awareness around something that unfortunately not a lot of people know about. And so this is how we started. It was back in Tel Aviv. Then we relocated, three of us, to the Silicon Valley. And the rest is history.
I didn't mention that it's Veterans Day today. And Roi mentioned the military service, which reminded me of why I'm adorning my camouflage military attire today to honor those that have served and those that are currently serving.
Yeah.
A lot of family and current friends are actually, one of my friends is deployed now. So I just wanted to thank everyone for their service and acknowledge Veterans Day here in the U.S. and thank people across the world like Roi who have served their respective countries.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things I'm curious about, so I'm going to go ahead, but I'll set you up so you can deliver it. One of the things that you said to me early on that really captured me was how to think about Active Directory differently. And you said that there's a design to it. So what's the phrase? What's a way that you taught me that other people can think about Active Directory? And then I want to go explore that a little deeper.
Yeah. So everybody knows what Active Directory is. At the end of the day, it's just is an application, is a database to help the organization to better manage their resources, better manage the authorization and authentication between the identity to the right resources he wants to access to. That's kind of all the operational side of Active Directory. So what we want to talk today about is the security side of it. And the security side of it is that Active Directory, and if you will, the domain network is exposed by design.
Yeah, that's the phrase I love. I just want to stop there for a second because, a lot of people, Paul, I mean, we talk about Active Directory all the time, and what we're always looking at are all the challenges with it. And Roi, as soon as you said, well, it's exposed by design, it's supposed to connect things. It's supposed to manage resources.
It's supposed to.
And so automatically, that's a great place if you're an attacker to go. And it's automatically a challenge for us from a security perspective, right? And so that's the way you look at it.
I don't know if it's a brilliant marketing phrase from Microsoft or a horrible marketing phrase, but if their marketing tagline was exposed by design, not sure how I would feel.
Ours.
That's yours.
No, it's ours.
No,
Yeah.
it's his. It's the way
Yeah.
Roi explains it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think Microsoft is.
I don't think Microsoft wants that as the
But I just want to point out. I think that's a really good way to explain it. And again, because I'm always going to look at how we explain something. If you're a security officer today, or you're a security leader, and somebody says, "Well, I don't understand the problem with Active Directory. I mean, it's doing what it's supposed to." You say, "That's exactly right. It's exposed by design." And while that's good for us, that also could be good for the attackers. I want to be able to do something different, right? And Roi, that's the problem that you're solving.
Yeah, so you know what? Let me even give you a more in-depth phrase or example. So when I say the domain, the Active Directory is exposed by design, what I mean is that when you take a machine, any machine, it could be a server, it could be a PC, whatever, and you are connecting it to a domain environment. From that point on, that particular machine is exposed by design to the entire corporation resources. So right. That's actually the idea, that it's managed by Active Directory, and that Active Directory is a database that stores the entire information about the entire corporate. Now, the idea here is, regardless the privileges that you have the ability to get 100% visibility on all the resources by just using a built-in tools that was there at the endpoint by design, and you can query. You can query the Active Directory using LDAP or SAML, SAML protocol, or SOAP protocol, or other protocols, in order to just get all the information from the Active Directory. You can literally ask the Active Directory, hey, please provide me all the list of servers inside the entire corporate, and Active Directory will obligate. And we'll
because it's designed to be helpful, right? I mean, that's the whole exposed by design.
Exactly. That's
so in security, if we get upset about that, just remember it wasn't designed to be secure by design. It was designed to be exposed and to facilitate all this type of stuff. Now, Roi, your experience then was did you focus on this for the company and as part of your solution? Because was this the common attack vector? Let me try this again. The common attack vector, or were you trying to defend it, or did you have your hand in a little bit of both, and that's what really helped you focus on the Active Directory part?
It is. That's exactly what it is. And when we tell the story, when we build the company, of course, we will talk about the difference between other companies. But when we built the company, when we saw the need, we wanted to create such a story that will be just stick to the facts. There is no real marketing around here. It's just basic stuff, and just we looked at it from a different perspective. If you read or if you see all the advanced persistent threat reports, you will see that at the end of the day, attackers, they use various methodologies in order to penetrate the organization. But since they managed to get a foothold on a compromised machine, that's it. From that point on, if that machine is connected to the domain, they will use the same methodology, and all of them, whatever the campaign was, they literally use the same methodology, which is get the knowledge from the Active Directory, get all the information about the identities, the applications, the servers, whatever the target, and then steal domain credentials. It's really important to understand it's a domain credentials. And that's it. Access the targets that they want. Move laterally inside. Take the data, or guys, even encrypt it. And ask for kind of a ransom.
Right.
You can encrypt the entire place and then call for even a big ransom, which is a great business. But I'm not encouraging anything. But that's what led us to think and to say, hey, there is something here. Of course, we used to do this back in the day, but when we got off the army, we were a little bit, I will say, naive, because we thought that all other security peers are aware about that, and there is probably a solution that can prevent that and maybe mitigate the risk. But it's not there.
Turns out the answer is no. Well, so let me ask what I think is a fairly obvious question then. It's exposed by design. It's a common attack vector for attackers. So what do we do about it? I mean, I know you have a solution, but how do we even start thinking about that, Roi? What do people need to do?
The first thing is to admit that there is a problem. That thing which is we are like so much, and we've been using for the last 17 years, it's exposing us to a really big threat. So just by understanding that fact, then realize that really there is nothing that we can do in order to prevent or even to stop those queries from being sent to the Active Directory. It doesn't something that you can achieve. So those two facts is the key points to understand. And another thing to kind of learn from it is you need to know that at the end of the day, if this is the case, if this is what it means for attackers, if this is what it means that when you get a compromised machine that is connected to the domain, this is it's literally jeopardized the entire corporate. If you understand that fact, it means to you, and it means to the security team, that it only takes just one compromised endpoint to jeopardize the entire corporate. Because again, from that one single compromised point, they get everything.
So what you're saying then is that this, if we look at, Paul and I always like to say, if I've got 99 problems, you're saying this is definitely in the upper third, if not maybe even closer to the top of the list. So then the reason that there's so much confusion around this is because it's exposed by design. I think trying to just understand the way Active Directory works is itself requires a little bit of investment of time. But then it's that question of, so what do I do about it? Because I don't think we can just go in. It's not a couple quick configuration settings, and we run that risk of preventing it from doing its purpose. So is that why this kind of remains a challenge? Because there's not a lot of good solutions around it, which of course is what prompted you to start taking a look at that. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. When you don't have the ability to block or prevent those queries from being sent, and you understand that fact, the solution to do that and the solution to solve that problem is what we are suggesting, and we see kind of great feedback from the customers and great feedback from security professionals and a great feedback from the community. So
now, Roi,
at the end of the
speaking
day,
of feedback, I want to put Michael's question into context because early next week I'm presenting at the Sans Pentest Hackfest Summit, and one of my slides, and I want to get your feedback on this, Roi, because I'm really genuinely interested in it. I think it addresses Michael's question in a big way. I've got 5 things in Active Directory that typically people don't secure or lock down in any capacity, and that is I recommend discontinue the use of LM, which is the old password hashes, prevent pass-to-hash attacks. I've changed my third one now to manage high-privileged credentials, create a WPAT entry and disable NBNS and LLMNR, which, as we talk about, exposed by design, right? That's what makes Active Directory very chatty. And then 5 is prevent password hashes from being stored in memory. I feel like I've captured the somewhat of the 5, maybe. I don't know. I want your expert opinion on this, of those 5 things. Now, if you walk into a boardroom, Michael, and you're like, well, we need to disable LMNR.
Okay, thanks. Hey, can someone give me some coffee? That's done.
Yeah, Roi understands the impacts. And so my question for you, are those the 5 things? And how do we get organizations to start looking at these issues and addressing them? Because many of them don't when I talk to my pen tester friends.
So again, what you said, those are really great things. I can easily add you even more stuff that needs to be addressed.
For sure.
The LLMNR, it's a great thing. It's a way to go. It's really important to disable that. Mm-hmm. But I want to focus on the big picture here, and the big picture here is those all those protocols that are available to anyone that has a machine in a domain, compromised machine in a domain, just actually anyone that has a domain machine connected, and that can then query the Active Directory and get everything. So I'll say that our approach to solve that, to solve that problem, is to obfuscate that data. Again, we cannot prevent that data from being sent from the endpoint to the Active Directory and going back
and also to Roy's point, to back what Roy's saying is essentially like those 5 things and all that alphabet soup that I mentioned. Like, that's not easy stuff to do.
Right.
It's first not easy to understand what all that stuff means. It took me years to dissect it as a pen tester and figure out what it means. And then it's a whole other thing to actually implement the defenses. It's almost, I feel, it's much harder to defend against those things. And actually, there's probably a 6th thing with SMB, disabling V1 and V2. It's harder for a defender, way harder than it is for an attacker in this. And the tables are really in the attacker's favor.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's exactly the thing. And you can talk even more about, you talked about pass the hash and all those kind of methodology, and I'll ask you, what about, the fact that you pass the ticket? This is
curb roasting.
That's really hard to defend against. And it's just, asking the domain controllers to give you the right ticket, and you can just do whatever you want with that. I think we covered that thing in one of our latest shows.
Yeah,
here.
and that comes down to credential management in a place where people don't even think that they need credential management, and that's just one of the gap. Like, basically, you need to put a long password on all your service accounts, and that's not easy. There's not a lot of good facilities for doing that. And basically, I'm underscoring Roy's point of in Javelin's solution. Not to steal your thunder, Roi, but in Javelin's solution, they're basically creating deception technology to catch people as they execute these attacks, because securing it is, when I present this as my main point, is securing this is not easy. There's so many places.
Right.
And if you've got an Active Directory network that is going 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 nodes, you've got this problem in a big way.
Well, you know what I like about this, too, and it's a great setup for you, Roi, is that one of the things I've learned, if you're trying to explain a problem, and I liked, Roy, how you opened up by saying, first thing, we got to admit that there's a problem. And I would even say there's a problem and an opportunity. This is how Active Directory was designed. Also, it's being used against us. So that's the problem. The opportunity is, hey, I can take a look at it. Paul, I love your list. If I could take a look at that and bring that to somebody and maybe try to help them understand it, and they go, okay, do that. And you're like, yeah. So here's the thing about that. If you're trying to position a product or sell it, if I can show you what it's like and give you a taste of it, and you look at that and say, I can't do that, then Roy, what a perfect setup for you, because you're like, yep, that's the stuff you got to do. Or I've got this other approach. Now, when you talk about obfuscation, you talk about deception technologies, I think that's one of those things where you go, oh, yeah, I like that. What is that? And I don't think a lot of people ask. So when we talk about obfuscation or we talk about deception technology, can you give us kind of a high level of what that means?
Yeah, so the idea here is to obfuscate the data the attacker sees. At the end of the day, we are controlling the attacker perception at the domain network. So again, remember, if I can, as an attacker, can ask, give me about all the servers here, give me a list of all the servers here, and let's say you have 100,000 servers. So at the end of the day, the attacker can get that list and do whatever he wants with that. Now, our idea was, what if instead of 100,000 servers, the attacker will see a different number, and that number is controlled by our artificial intelligence algorithm that then can say, hey, you have 100,000 servers, not a problem. We can easily say, we can easily project, we can easily show the attacker a different thing, which could be 1 million servers. If you want 1.5 million servers, there is no limit to the amount of the data that can be then projected to the attacker right at the point of breach. So nothing is changed at the Active Directory nor the network. So there's no kind of a dummy virtual machines, kind of honeypots like solutions. This is not the case.
So two obvious questions off of that. The first of which is, so wait, how does the legitimate stuff get where it needs to go? But come back to that, because what I want to understand then is, as you're talking about the obfuscation, it almost feels like then this is almost a way to overwhelm the attacker, that there's so much they can't sift through it. It's almost like when we complain about, oh, great, well, there's an alert. There's so many alerts. I have alert fatigue. I can't figure it out. Is that almost like you're giving them so much information and so much of it that's false? If I'm an attacker, I can't possibly figure out where to go. Am I understanding you right, or is there a better way to think about it?
I will maybe emphasize it a little bit from a statistical point of view. From a statistical point of view, what you want is to get the upper hand and ensure that you will win, no matter what attacker, what move attacker will take. So what I'm saying is, if you have the ability to flip dramatically the odds against the attacker, the odds of being, attacking the right asset, using this methodology, and we can go into, mathematics and statistical calculation later, but using this algorithms, you can say, and we actually are saying, that we can promise that we can promise 99.34% chance that the attacker will attack the wrong or the fake machine. That's kind of the main goal. And again,
well, okay, so let's stay with that for a second. So 99.34%. That's impressive. That they're going to attack the wrong machine. So at that point, then, is it about frustrating them and creating friction for the attackers, or is it about now I have the ability to detect them, I have the ability to react? Like, it's basically, I'm protecting my stuff because they're not getting to it, and because I'm forcing them to go after these false flags, now they've revealed themselves. It's kind of doing both at the same time.
Exactly. I just want to make clear. We didn't build the company to frustrating attackers.
Fair point. Fair point.
Yeah. our goal is to better detect the attackers. I mean, this methodology is by them revealing them to us, but it's a different, it's not the main thing. The main thing is to detect them, and in a very efficient way. Because if you look at the alternatives is are very hard to actually to manage.
Yeah, and Roy, I wanted to speak to that moment because I spent a little time recently thinking about this, and I've kind of put it into three buckets. The third being what you've built in terms of having a tool that can communicate with each other, that can use artificial intelligence to create basically fake assets within the environment, but there's a huge benefit to that. But if you take a step back and you look at a lot of people lump honeypots and deception and honey tokens like all into the same bucket. And I think that's the major misconception in the market today about this technology. When I think of a honeypot, I think of a separate, isolated system that I just kind of hope someone stumbles across and gets stuck in the trap. Maybe I can observe them. Maybe it's a distraction to them, but it's completely separate physical device, and oftentimes maybe a virtual device, but it's a separate thing. And that has limited effectiveness, in my opinion. Now, people have taken some of this concept of creating fake data, and in fact, Javelin has a great list of 7 things that are like, you can go create fake data in your Active Directory. There's a lot of folks that have recommended that people do that. However, where it falls down is how do you manage that in a large Active Directory environment?
That was my next question.
Keep tabs of what fake stuff you've created, what's real, what's fake. Those lines start to blur, and it starts to be a management headache. And where I think Javelin really shines is that they're tying all that together for you, taking all of the good things from those solutions, but giving you a tool to manage, monitor, control, maintain, and take action, which I think is the big piece.
Yeah, and to that, Roy, then, so how does your legitimate stuff on the inside of the network not get confused by the obfuscation?
Yeah, so I will touch this in 1 second, but I want to just connect to what Paul just said. All those
Mm-hmm.
guys that probably are doing all those honey tokens, and put them at the endpoint and hope, praying, that the attacker will take the bait,
right,
and be redirected to the dummy virtual machine. Those things, and you can just Google. I encourage everyone to Google just honeypot buster. It's just a PowerShell script that we kind of wrote. It's like 3 months ago. And the idea here is that those honey tokens can be validated. And what does it mean? Let's see, there is a honey token in front of me. There is ways, and there are actually ways that I as an attacker can validate before I'm using that honey token, and make sure this is not a trap. So what we did is just automated that process for you. So just Google up, and you will see all those something like actually we cover all the honey tokens that is out there, and showing by querying the Active Directory and validate that information. For example, if someone injected a fake credentials into the LSS memory. So it's really easy to go back to the Active Directory. Remember, is kind of our best friend, and ask him, hey, do you know that guy? I mean, is it really a domain admin, or is it the guy that is it? So it's really important. It's really easy, and you didn't trigger any alert.
Yeah.
So this is like one thing, and there is more other stuff that I mean we show. And this is kind of back to Paul's.
I have a slide on that for next week already.
Yep, no.
I mentioned honeypot buster, so I'm glad you mentioned it there, Roy. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And back to you, Michael. So the idea is regular users are not going to actively just use queries to Active Directory and get all that that information.
Okay.
So that's one thing, but there are guys like domain administrators, This is actually their day-to-day job, so they would need to use that. And applications, there are applications that connected to the domain, they need to use the directory information in order to do what they are doing. And for those stuff, the simple answers, not the simple solution, but a simple answer is just a whitelist. It's a whitelist. It's a very simple whitelist.
Yep.
At the end of the day, that says, hey, if that process, we're not talking about a source IP or just a simple, that process alone is querying the Active Directory on a daily basis, that process is allowed to see the real non-obfuscated data. Others, whatever, if that machine is even compromised by the attacker, he will see the fake data. That's why it's so important and unique in this methodology. And for those administrators, the algorithm is recognized that they are high privilege users, and it stores them in a whitelist kind of fashion. And if administrators, that again, as we said, is his day-to-day business to query the Active Directory and do whatever he do, that's actually when he will being prompt to revalidate his identity, and then
I
he
like
will
that
be
touch.
allowed.
Okay, yep. You answered a question I had in the back of my head, but I got to tell you, as I'm listening to this, Roi, we've looked at obfuscation for 20 years, and we've known that there were always limitations. And as I'm listening to you describe it, sometimes I'm getting, and I feel like this is an exciting time to be in security. I know some people look at it and say, I've been doing the same things now for 20 years. And as you've pointed out, Roi, this is not a new problem, taking a look at Active Directory, but talking to you about using some cool techniques, but finally being able to stack them together in the right order means the people who need to get the results are getting the results, and the attackers are being obfuscated. And I'm excited. I mean, I love looking at stuff like this. Okay, so if you're a CISO today, you're a security leader today, and you're trying to figure out all the new solutions that you can take a look at, and you've got a fixed amount of resources, a fixed amount of time, probably less money than you'd like to have, when you go out and you work with security leaders, how can you guide them? What do they need to think about to be more successful?
So my suggestions to CISOs out there is first, try to focus on the problem. Try to learn, the problem itself as far as you can get. Bring consultants just to explain you the problem. It has nothing to do with the various solutions that is out there. That's kind of the simple one suggestion that I have. The second suggestion that I have is I will even start from the end of my answer. I will say every corporate or every organization needs to have two CISOs. One CISO for a domain environment and one CISO for a non-domain environment. Now, it's not real. I'm not expecting every organization to have two CISOs, but the idea, the mindset needs to be split into two solutions and defense solutions or preventive solutions that are designed for a domain environment. That's a one bucket. The other bucket is for solutions that are not by design meant to be in a domain environment. Now,
that's an interesting distinction.
Exactly. If you do that distinction, I mean, that distinction being used for years in the Army. I mean, you have tools.
Okay.
You have tools to fight in a battlefield, which is air. When we talk about aircraft or whatever. Or there is different tools, defense tools, offensive tools that are being used at the ground or at the sea. So that's kind of the same, kind of a simple metaphor to explain and to drive that.
You're thinking about your landscape. I mean, you've got to think about your landscape, not just the problem you're trying to solve, but your landscape, your environment and your terrain. I like that a lot, actually.
Exactly. I want to add another thing, which is attackers also know that.
Yeah.
So when they attacking a domain environment, they are using a different toolbox. They are bringing a different toolbox, whether if they're actually going after a non-domain environment. And to just wrap it up, I'll say that the rules for attack as well as detection in a domain environment are different. So, I mean, this is one of the biggest goal here us in Javelin to change. We want everybody to know that there is a difference.
What I really like from a positioning standpoint, and this isn't Roy's official positioning statement, but the way that I tend to look at this in talking with enterprises and trying to understand their struggles is many enterprises are looking at endpoint detection, response, and prevention.
Yep.
And looking to that as a solution. And a lot of times where I'll segue into a call is, well, what are you doing to prevent lateral movement in
Yep.
your Active Directory?
Yep.
Because look, yeah, it's bad if someone falls victim to an email phishing campaign and downloads a document. And oh, by the way, there's a really big bug, which I'm going to call a vulnerability. Microsoft calls it a feature.
It's an undocumented feature, Paul.
That allows someone to execute code. Okay, that's one thing. And now endpoint systems are struggling to detect that. But what I'm saying is, okay, so let's say someone does that. Like the next thing they might do is they might start touching Active Directory. And I'm like, if you can detect that, you're still in good shape because you prevented the bad things from happening
Well,
next.
yeah, and what's interesting too, and Roy, you nuance this, is one of the things that I've also been paying attention to is a lot of what we call prevention in security is actually a rapid detection with some sort of a measured response.
Yes.
Which is just detection and response. But as you were pointing out, Roy, if I'm looking at something statistically and I'm obfuscating them and they can't get to it in the first place, like, yes, that still triggers a detection and a response, but it's a prevention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm feeding you false data and you can't get to it, therefore I've prevented it. I'm liking the fact, and I hope that as an industry we get better at distinguishing prevention from really, really fast detection response that we've been calling prevention for 20 years because that's the best we could do. But now we can straight up prevent something. Oh, that's going to get me a little bit more excited about prevention again.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it.
Yeah, it is. It's totally true. And just as a thumb rule, I will say when you, for example, say lateral movement. So I will always add, on the end of the sentence, where. Is it lateral movement in a domain environment? Is it lateral movement in a non-domain environment?
I like that, yeah.
That's always, if you add that, then your kind of algorithms or, how you think about the defenses or the offenses, methodologies are immediately changed.
Mm. Lateral movement tends to be very noisy on the network side of things. And that's why I believe a lot of attackers have moved to Active Directory because, as Roy stated in the beginning, like the queries I'm making is a part of the way Active Directory should function. It's, again, exposed by design.
Because if you think about it, we've been talking about lateral movement now for 5, 6, 7 years pretty aggressively.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to switch up the tactics.
When I join the domain, I want to be able to see all the printers and network drives that are there. Like, that stuff should just show up, right? That's the exposed by design.
Yep. I like it.
That's awesome. So, Roy, what messages in closing do you have for maybe CISOs and IT security leaders that may be thinking about this problem not in the right way or not recognizing this as a problem, or really sometimes what I find is they just kind of spread it out into multiple problems and try and develop multiple solutions when really there's, at the top over here, there's this big problem. What can we do to educate folks on this issue at a high level?
Again, in a high level, what I would like people to, customers and our community to kind of remember from that session is there is a difference between a machine that is connected to a domain and a machine that doesn't. Each and every machine, are jeopardizing our environment in a totally different way. And at the end of the day, CISOs needs to understand the consequences, the consequences of connecting a machine to a domain. And if they will understand that, because that touched a lot of, problems in their security posture. It's a problem in the identity. It's a problem, as you guys said, it's credential theft. It's lateral movement. It's all that kind of stuff. And just, that's the main message. If they understand the difference between these two scenarios and understand what are the solutions based on the battlefield, if you will, the battlefield that they are implementing that solution into, then I can tell you that here in Javelin we did 60%, 17% of our job.
I like to use the analogy of Meet the Fockers, where he does the circle of trust.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're out here, but if you're in the domain, like, you're in that circle of trust, and like it's totally different, the lot less rules, right? I mean,
and you know what? We're laughing about that, but I'll tell you what, you bust that at an executive meeting.
People get it.
Or you go find that clip on YouTube because we know it's there, and people go, oh. So everybody has a good laugh, and they get it. That's a great tip, Paul.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, Roi, thank you very much for appearing on Startup Security Weekly. It was wonderful having you. I love talking about this topic. So, I mean, guys, come back anytime because I love talking about this topic. Awesome. Thanks so much, Roi.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. With that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and talk about some startup in security business stuff, I think is what we're kind of phrasing it as.
Yeah,
so.
we'll chat about that. I just wrote something down.
All right. Let's do it. Stay tuned.